What's happening, people? Welcome back to the podcast. Hello, how are we? Well, I feel like I've already, as soon as the podcast has started, I've got myself in a weird little mood. I was actually really worried because I feel knackered, and the problem with solo podcasts is you can't bounce off anyone. And I don't know how, like, you know, Andrew Huberman and all that do it, where they just sit down and spout about like anything, like how to sleep better and all that, and they just sit for 2 hours and look at the camera and just state facts. I would lose my mind. I have to go off in tangents about all sorts. I have to go off and, like, right now I just want to tell you, like, I just have an extreme urge to tell you about the fact I was in Milan with my missus, right, and we were on this canal. And then there was these wee art galleries around it, and these, like, underneath these wee houses, and it was all really fancy. And it was like all Italian-esque. Imagine like a wee like alley next to a canal with art in Italy, right? And we were in there, and it was all hush hush. You had to be quiet and look at the art. And then this cat walks past us, and it's about 10 meters away, right? And I was like, there's a cat. That's weird because it's a very busy place. It's weird there's a cat there. I'm staring at the cat, and then I just heard meow. And I was like, fuck, that cat's meow is enormous. That's the loudest meow I've ever heard. And then it happened again, and I was like, what? It was like, meow. And I was like, how the fuck is that getting its meow to echo round this alley? And then I looked to the side. Me and my missus, we have a wee side glance. There's an Asian lady who has just meowed. She has just literally went, meow, and then went like that. As if she was on the wind-up. As if she was trying to communicate with the cat, but not let any humans know. But she's meowing in public. And even the cat was like, what the fuck are you doing? You absolute fucking space cadet. But anyway, in situations like that, I cannot control myself. And I just buckled. I buckled under the pressure. You're meant to go, right, we're being all inclusive here. Asians are allowed to meow. But I couldn't. I was gone. I nearly hit the deck. Meow. Meow. And I hope Dale can't hear me starting the podcast and he's outside and I'm meowing. But anyway, yeah. Oh, tangent. This is meant to be the intro of this podcast. We are going to be talking about something completely irrelevant to that chat. And it is called Why You Need to Stop Calling Yourself Fat. And I'm going to go right in depth. Bear in mind, before we get into it, I'm not a therapist, I'm a personal trainer. Lots of these sort of techniques would be stuff that therapists would do with you. So, like, in an ideal world, you would maybe go, you could do this yourself, but in an ideal world, you would go and do this with a professional. I maybe wouldn't, and by the way, I'm not really enjoying this whole rise of online therapy through apps. I think it's pretty much going to be, and I haven't looked into it, but real life stuff, man. Let's stick to the real life stuff. I don't think these apps are really going to be that helpful. It's the same when PTs bring out their £10 program, and I'm like, yeah, but people, like, have no belief in themselves, so you giving them an app to do a program on probably isn't going to get them to go to the gym. They need to understand why they self-sabotage and stuff like that. I would look at it the same way. Like, you probably need someone there. Like, the biggest thing with it, with like a therapist or a PT, is there's some, like, no, obviously there's loads of bad therapists and PTs, but the biggest thing that gets you to actually progress is hopefully the other person is someone who supports you, and you know they support them, they support you, and you kind of have like a trust between the two of you that there'll be no judgment no matter what. That's what gets people to eventually start believing in themselves as you work together for longer and longer. So that being said, I'm gonna try give you like tools and make you understand why calling yourself fat, typically in the terms that most people do it, and the tone that most people do it, is so detrimental to your mental health, your physical health, and why that way of thinking is one of the biggest things that holds you back. So I want to completely break down the word fat itself, what it actually means in the way that we use it, and why it basically fucks you up. And I went through this full experience myself, so I can talk about my own journey, with these sort of negative thoughts, what really happened for me to go over it, because that's what you need to know. You need to hear some experiences that you can relate to as well. So yeah, without any more nonsense and without going off in tangents about Asians meowing, let's get into the podcast. Rate it on Spotify. We're on 214 this year. I'm trying to hit 500. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. We have these type of podcasts where I try to give help without losing my mind in the middle of the show. And then we have the wee funny ones as well, where I just get random friends and stuff on. No real big guests that you've ever heard of, because I don't want to listen to them spout the same shite that they spout on everyone else's podcasts. This is the raw stuff of people that barely know what they're talking about. Okay, enjoy. So the main way I grew a social media following, being honest, was probably playing on the fact I was overweight as a kid. I just used to use pictures of myself when I was overweight, and yeah, it was real. It happened. It was like something I suffered with for a good 10 years of my life. But I definitely played on it too much. So I don't want this to be really about my childhood. Because I want to go through my thought patterns rather than the fact I was overweight, and just so you can see maybe the trends that you have if you're someone that is overweight or someone that calls themselves fat. This is stuff we're going to go into. Calling yourself fat can range from people that, if you look to them on the BMI scale, can range from people that are underweight, can range from people that are a normal healthy weight, can range from people that are just maybe have put on 5 pounds, or people that are obese or morbidly obese. Anyone can call themselves fat, and lots of people do call themselves fat that maybe aren't overweight on a BMI scale whatsoever. And that there's a reason why this is so important, right? So anyway, what was I like when I was going through this? So I got fat when I was about 6 or 7. I remember going, I'm tubbier, like I feel like I'm heavier than people. I remember being the cutest little boy up until I was about 6 or 7. And I remember, like, even when I was like 4, I remember I had 2 girlfriends in nursery. Thank you very much. I remember there was an argument between 2 4-year-old girls by the way, I was 4 as well. So listen, but they were arguing over me because I had like bleach blonde, luscious locks, blue eyes, Hitler's wet dream. Oh. Wet dream. I don't know if Hitler was a paedophile, but he probably was, let's be honest. Allegedly. See what I mean? I can't be Andrew Huberman because I'm too fucking... My brain is too fried. Anyway. Hitler's a pedo. The first word I would use to describe myself when I was from like the ages of 7 to even like 19, 20 would have been fat. I would have identified as being fat. And I've said this on like Instagram and stuff before. If you were to just go in the cupboards in my mum's house, because I lived with my mum when I was growing up, you would find, I'm almost sure they're probably still there. You would find notepads that would just say the date, my name, and how I was going to lose a certain amount of weight, and this was finally going to be the time that I was going to lose weight. And I would always write it in a notepad. When I eventually got a phone, I would take pictures and stuff as well. And it would never happen for me. And the thing that grinds me the most about advice from PTs is when they say things like, oh, you're just not disciplined, or you just don't want it enough. Motherfucker. I wanted this shit more than anyone else on the planet. I just self-sabotaged myself because I had no belief in myself whatsoever. That's not a victim thing, but the idea that I didn't want it enough is complete and utter bollocks. I wanted it more. I wanted it too much. I put too much pressure on myself. I had zero knowledge, but the idea that I didn't want this enough, I wanted it too much. I wanted it there and then. That's not a problem of not wanting something enough. That's one that's so much that you do stuff that you can't keep up and you have unrealistic expectations. So the problem isn't not wanting it. Most people who struggle with their weight want to not struggle with their weight. That's the thing they probably want most in the world. They want to not struggle with their weight, or at least be content in themselves, in their body, right? So that's a load of pish. I hate when people say that. I'm like, motherfucker. If you could have met me and you told me I didn't want it enough, I'd have slapped you silly. But anyway, my notepads would always start with how I was going to do it this time, what I was going to do. And the reason that I would self-sabotage myself so much is because I'd learned so many behaviours from my mum. So my mum would go Weight Watchers. She suffered with anorexia. She gained weight. I had no knowledge in food, so I'm just eating the way my mum's cooking for me. And then my mum would go mental when the scale didn't go down. So I would think, right, okay, there's something wrong when the scale doesn't go down. And because, especially, see the boomers, right? In terms of like having self-awareness, anything to do with mental health, weight loss, and just understanding other people, boomers are idiots. No offense to you if you're a boomer, right? But just self-awareness on how other things affect other people, they're the least aware generation by far. You can sit and say we are on TikTok. These bloody millennials and Generation Z, isn't it? Z, stuck on that bloody TikTok. All they do all day long. I've got feelings and I'm on TikTok. Shh, boomer. Shush, you boomer. Shush, you boomer. I feel like these are real things. You just don't understand them. Okay, that's fine. I'll help you understand them. It's like my dad, right? See, when I went for a breakup, my mum was having episodes of psychosis. Naturally, I'd never had anxiety before, but I was riddled with it because of two major life changes, right? I have to deal with my mum now being whatever she is, personality disorder, whatever it is, right? Basically, she's pretty much changed since then, and I never got on with her anyway. But listen, that's nothing to do with this, and I'm going off on a tangent again, but I was saying this to Daly earlier, like my dad just, and he's great now, but I've almost bullied my dad into understanding like what thought patterns are and like how it can affect you and how you need to be aware of them, etc. Like I've almost bullied him because I had my own struggles or whatever, and he just never understood them. And I was like, cunt, stop just telling me to get over it. It makes no sense and it's not helpful. It makes it worse. So when I first moved to Australia, and this was a wee bit harsh, right? But this is what I mean about how I bullied him. And bear in mind, I'm like 22. This is well before I became a PT, but it kind of worked. When I announced to my dad I was going to Australia, I didn't want to do it because I knew he wasn't going to let me go. He was going to do everything to not let me go. I'm an only child. Close to my dad. I lived with my dad from like 18 to then, so that means 4 years. Every time I've came back to Scotland, I've just went and lived with my dad, so we got a good relationship. And I went, I waited till like maybe like 3 weeks before I was going to Australia, and then I told him, and he went all through like, is it because your mum? Is it because like a girl or your ex or anything? And I was like, no, I just want to go to Australia. Like as in, I want to go. That's what I'd been to Asia. I'd came back home for 6 months, and that's what I'd been saving up to do. And I'd already told him like I was gonna go away again. But he woke up the next day. He hadn't slept all day. He was walking about and stuff. He was going all these walks. He'd done that for like a week, and he was like, I need to let you know I'm so like I can't sleep and all that. And I was like, you have anxiety, my friend. That's what anxiety is, right? So if I tell you just get over it, and you go, how can I just get over you going to Australia? I go, bingo, you can't. That's a thing you're going to have to process. And some anxiety might be part of that process. Bingo. Boomer. You've just been boomed. Fuck me, I'm talking some shit today anyway. Right. So, especially if like, my sort of parents are from that generation, we have also inherited some of their boomer bollocks, right? That the sort of diets they went through crazy diets, like all this the cabbage diet, Atkins diet. They didn't have a clue about weight loss at all. I remember like some of the things my dad used to say to me was like, don't eat carbs after 6 o'clock. Eating at night is bad for you. Bread, they had a massive thing with bread. That's why it's still ingrained in culture just now that bread somehow makes you morbidly obese as soon as you put a slice of Warburton's in your mouth. Absolute bollocks, obviously. So we learned a lot of well, not we. There's probably people that are boomers, and I apologise for so much boomer shaming so far. But I'm trying to educate the boomers as well. But that's why I had so much of these like illogical and irrational thoughts around food. So a lot of it was education, but a lot of it was ingrained thought patterns, cultural beliefs about how I maybe needed to be a certain size. Same way that a lot of girls that grew up maybe early 90s, early 2000s felt like they had to look like size 6 models. Very similar. A lot of people think that guys don't have experienced any of this. Why do you think so many people are on steroids? Of course we experience it. It's just most of the time a guy's reaction to body image issues is to lift weights and get swole. But I was overweight, so I went almost I went the same way as most women do. I had a weight problem to solve more than anything, rather than or a weight problem not to solve, a weight problem that was my biggest insecurity. My insecurity wasn't I don't have big enough muscles. It was I feel like my tits are jiggling when I walk about. That was my insecurity. Anyway, so we want to go through why all of this was actually holding me back, all the calling myself fat, all the negative self-talk, and a lot of the negative self-talk that I had about like honestly, every time I would start something and then fail straight away, I'd be like, I'm a fat, lazy bastard and I'm not capable of sticking to anything. That's literal sentences I would say to myself. I'd be like, I'm a failure. I can never do this. Every time I try, I fuck it up. I'm just never going to manage to do it. And then I would turn to food to cope with that. I would raid the cupboards, Kit Kats, big maybe massive dairy milks, that sort of thing. And then it would only be once I'd really self-sabotaged myself so much that I would feel so guilty again that I would build up the courage to try again from a place of desperation, from a place of rock bottom basically, and I'd be like, right, I'd start building myself up. I was like, I can do this, I can definitely do it, it can't be worse than this. Try again, do the same thing to myself again, fuck myself up. But there's so much that is coming from ingrained beliefs about myself that I've learned from parents, but then I've then ingrained into myself. And also something I was thinking about the other day, like I was probably a wee bit of a piss taker in school, as you can probably imagine, and I think I used that as a deflection for the fact that I was overweight. So I was terrified that people call me fat, but that never really happened that often. But I bet them to it. I was like, you can't call me fat, because I just called myself a fat bastard, and then, I don't know, the belly flopped into the water at swimming, you know? So you can't take the piss out of me, because it just made you all laugh and took the piss out of myself. I think I used that as a deflection, so people can be like, that's why when I get clients who are always going to take the piss straight away, I'm like, I'll ask them a serious question. I was like, and I need a serious answer, because the funny deflection thing is that exactly. It's a deflection, and it doesn't help you. It's just like it's almost like a suit of armor, but there's a broken person behind it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it might help you from the outside, help you deflect things coming in, but in there you're still broken. So the being funny part helps being funny a wee bit, but it doesn't help you that much. So yeah, that's what I was like when I was growing up. So let's get into the actual podcast. So I want you to look at quote unquote being fat very differently, right? So body fat is like the number of, well, let's not get sciencey, because I can't do sciencey too much. What's the best way to explain body fat? I've wrote it down here, but I don't know if this is the best way to explain it. But body fat is the number of like fatty muscles in the body that represent the total amount of tissue you have. So like it's the percentage of you that is fat, right? So you can gain fat and you can lose fat, and it's determined by your activity levels, your food intake, and your lifestyle, say, right? All of those three things can change. So like your lifestyle can change, your activity levels can change, and so can your food intake, so can your food habits, so can the types of food you eat. These can all change. However, when you describe yourself as fat, it's stated as a fact. So being fat is subjective. We've all met people that the last word we would use for them is fat, but they call themselves fat. So you've met people, when I was overweight, I've met people that they would like be starting to do like exercise, and they would be like, I need to lose this bit of fat, and I'm like, you've not got a pick of fat to lose. I would give my left bollock to have the same body fat percentage as you. I've got a client just now who I'll not give out information, right, but she's 57 kilos and she's great. Like she's been consistent for I think she's been on with me for like 7 or 8 months. But she first asked me, was like, do we need to lose weight first then? I'd be like, no, you don't. Obviously I wouldn't say it like that. I'd be like, why do you think, like, I always pick up on things really fast. I don't know, like, or like that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking for things like that, because it's PTs, if you do it, in my opinion, the correct way, where you're trying to give people self-awareness and the tools to be able to go and do this themselves. Ask them straight away, why do you think you need to lose fat? And she'd be like, oh, I've always been told by my mum that if I gain weight, it'll never come off, or if I gain weight, it'll be 10 times harder to lose it than gain it. And like this has came up time and time again. Every time like she's maybe had an event coming up and she's scared to gain weight, I've actually exposed her to, you know what, go and actually go completely off plan and see your weight go up like a kilo and then see it come down. These are the type of things that, this is why these apps and all that won't do that much for you unless you've already been doing this stuff for like 3 years and you know yourself a lot more. But if it's the first thing you're going to do, an app isn't going to give you the back and forth feedback to understand yourself. But she was like, the longer we got into it and the more and more it came up, I was like, right, tell me exactly what it is you believe about gaining weight. And she'd be like, oh, my mum was always overweight. She always struggled with her weight and she always used to drill into me time and time again that if I gain weight, I'll never be able to lose it. And I was like, so you're 57 kilos. What's the heaviest you've ever been? And it was like, whatever, like 58 or 59, which is still not overweight. And I was like, so you've never had a weight problem, but your mum had a weight problem and she has pretty much embedded her problems onto you, but you don't have her problems, but you think you do because she's ingrained that into you over and over and over again since you were a child. And she was like, yeah, you know what, you're actually right. And by the way, even though you get a little bit of awareness, these are cycles that have maybe been ingrained in you for years and years and years. I don't just say that to someone once and they then are like enlightened and that like the cycle isn't still going to maybe happen a little bit more, but you build more and more awareness and you keep doing the opposite of what you've maybe learned. Not the opposite, because the opposite may be awful. Well, you keep doing a better solution to what that is, and then that's how you change these sort of thought patterns. But anyway, my whole point is she would think she was overweight, or she would think if she gained a kilo, she was fat. But you, like, I'm not saying you because I don't know who the you is. There's many people that are listening to this, but you would probably look at her and go, she's not fat. So fat's a subjective term. It's more of an opinion. Yeah, you can go, I'm fat by BMI standards, but when it's the tone that you use it in, right? So people don't say, I'm fat in an interchangeable way. They state it as an opinion, just like they would say, I'm ugly, or I'm incapable of something, I'm a failure. People say, I'm fat, black or white, no grey, no idea that body fat can go up and down, no idea that no ability for you to change, no ability for your body fat to change, no give, right? So it's mad the way that when you're in this sort of cycle, you can seek comfort in telling yourself these things as well, but it only seeks comfort in the moment. So yeah, the reason I think it's also hard to break is because you've been comforting yourself with those sort of thoughts as well, so that it almost takes the control away from you. But when it takes the control away from you, you only comfort yourself in that moment, but then that's a thought pattern, so that pattern's still there. So even though you comfort yourself in that moment, next day, next week, next time you maybe self-sabotage yourself, those thoughts come again, and then there's inner turmoil. So this is why there's so much fucking flaws with like the body positivity movement. I honestly think it started because I would call myself body positive. Like it took me years and years and years, but like I can take my top off and I'm not by any means, probably in like the top, like I'm probably in the top or the bottom. If you took 5 PETs, I'd probably be in the third or fourth best shape out of them, which is not good. That's not like It's not a fucking good thing. But I don't care. And I would call that body positive because I'm pretty healthy. I would say I live a healthy lifestyle, but I'm not ripped and I'm not huge. Do have aspirations of maybe building some more muscle. I don't really care. I would call that body positivity, but I think that whole thing is just being given legs. Meant to be given 2 legs, and that whole thing has been it's turned into a centipede, and it's a Usain Bolt centipede, and it's just went off. It's went too far, and it's now lost its whole original meaning. But the idea that you can like just be overweight and then like just outthink any sort of negative thoughts, I don't think that'll do much for you. However, I think that I'm contradicting what the valuable stuff I'm going to say, right? So that was a wee bit of a tangent. I ended up fucking going round in circles, a wee bit like thought patterns. The last thing I want to say on this, when you state it as a fact, you identify with it as a fact. You treat it as like a personality trait, and yeah, it becomes who you are, and it's. Let's just leave it there, because the next part is what I'm gonna go into in the next subsection of the podcast. So there's a few different things so in therapy, like you get CBT, but there's all different methods, but a lot of them achieve similar outcomes, and it's just whatever one sort of works for you. So I've done like CBT, and it's like with Paul, who is my therapist, done like cognitive distortions, and like at the time, it's quite. I would just say it's eye opening at the time, and then it creates a lot of self awareness, but you don't notice anything happening at the time. You're just like, it's a bit fried that I thought that, and then you go, oh, maybe I actually still think that about some things, and it just starts creating some awareness. So like some of the things you can do is like you can write out all the thoughts that you have. They might not come at once. Maybe it might take you to look back at an event or something, or it might take you to like self-sabotage yourself. And when you're self-sabotaging yourself, that's when you've most likely, like, because what anxiety is you going into like fight or flight mode, right? So I would experience this a lot, and when I was unsafe in my previous relationships when I was younger, and I just didn't know what it was. I would like freeze, and then my thoughts would just be irrational as fuck, erratic, all over the place. But I would just be so fearful of not knowing what that feeling was. But then when I went back to therapy again once after my original bout, and the reason I talk about the relationship stuff alongside the food stuff is because it's all the same. Like how you battle these thoughts are all loads of similar sort of methods, and I done it with relationship stuff, but I didn't do it with food stuff. But I almost like taught myself this stuff, and that's why it took so much longer with food. Like the relationship stuff, 6 months of therapy, and then like a year of me just doing stuff differently myself, and I feel like I think about things way differently. But food fucking took a decade, or maybe even a decade and a half of me just like fucking myself up, and then not fucking myself up, but like fucking it, and then like destroying myself internally, and then like probably through podcasts and YouTube videos, like just soft wee hints of like that would maybe make me go, oh, the way I think about that's a bit fucked, the way I think about that's a bit fucked, and then maybe changing things, and that's how my relationship with food improved. But it'd been much quicker if I went to therapy. There's a reason therapists get better results with PTs. I think I've said that before, than PTs, probably not in terms of building muscle, but in terms of weight loss, because it's food is mostly an emotional thing, and the reason we've seen massive rises in obesity is because there is so much more calorie dense food and highly processed food, and we have no awareness on how our emotions affect our eating habits. So when we get emotional, it's so much easier now to go and consume a load of calories to cope than it was back in the boomer days, which is when they go, why were we not fat? Why is obesity rising now? They don't try hard enough. People, they eat too much, they're lazy, they're on that bloody TikTok. I'm telling you, they're on that bloody TikTok. Shut up, boomer. Anyway, right. So one of the things you can do is fact or opinion. And say you look at, I'm fat, I'm a failure, I'm ugly, I'm shit at talking to girls or guys, I'm terrible at dating, I'm unlovable, right? All of these, right? So that's 6, right? Say you were to look at, if you were to do like not a graph, a fucking list. One side's got fact, one side's got opinion. Every single one of them, I'm fat. Is it a fact or an opinion? Fat's subjective. Anyone can call themselves fat. That's an opinion. I'm a failure. Is that a fact or an opinion? Well, failure at what? Failure at what level of failure are you? Failure in whose eyes? That's an opinion. I'm ugly. Are you though? Someone will find you attractive. Someone, like, anyone will find, like, someone will be attracted to someone. Ugly in whose eyes? It's an opinion. These are all opinions. And most of the worst opinions that people who struggle with their weight have, most of the worst opinions that have ever been told to them have been told to them by themselves, or they've maybe had it told to them by someone else, and then that started it. But then the damage has really came internally after that. Now, again, I'm not saying, right, if your mum calls you fat when you're 6 and then you are riddled with like anxiety and you might have like whatever going on. I think that's what happened to my mum, I think, mostly. I'm not saying that's not a horrendous thing to do, but it's not that it's your fault. It's that the damage comes after when you internalize that, and then thought loop patterns over and over again. I'm fat, I'm a failure, yeah. Right. So when you call yourself fat, right, and you then start identifying with it, you then start feeling horrendous about yourself. You start then maybe catastrophizing things. These, especially when I used to do it with relationships, and my thoughts would be like, I'm unlovable, I'll never not be nervous. I also used to think if I said what I really felt, like if I was struggling with things, that it would be unattractive. And when I was thinking like this, it would just like go and it would just be over and over and over again, because I would go into like fight or flight mode, and it would just they would just get more and more bizarre. Like, right, nobody's ever gonna love me then, stuff like that, right? But the same would have happened when I was younger. It's just, or what, like when I really struggled with being overweight, the same would have happened. Fat, failure, piece of shit, got boobies. Those like, oh, I'm never going to get rid of these man boobies. Girls don't like man boobies. I would have been, I would have been erratic as well, right? So when you enter that mindset, not that mindset, when you shift into that, where your thoughts start becoming really erratic, it's stressful, right? It's stressful. That's the last place you really want to be, is in a thought loop pattern where you're being negative to yourself. It's also where you feel like you need to cope, and it's also like you want to get out it so much that you're like, right, how do I get out this? I'm probably going to do something to take my mind off it. I need to cope with something. And this is where coping mechanisms come in, right? When you're struggling with your weight and that you're overweight, and you're overweight, when you're struggling with the idea of being fat is a better way to put it, because again, like we said, subjective. You might not actually have to lose weight, some people. And at this advice, right, I said it once to one of my clients before. She'd said how 10 years ago she would love to be in the place, her 10 years ago is where she would love to be now. And I was like, were you happy with your weight then? And she was like, no, I was trying to always do crazy diets. I always wanted to lose weight. And I'm like, see you 10 years ago when you technically weren't overweight by like BMI standards, and then you now, the advice and the problem is still the same, and nothing changes. That's why people go, oh no, but I actually do genuinely believe I'm fat as a fact because I've looked at the BMI. And I'm like, yeah, but like we went through, the tone you use it in, you state it as a fact that is not changed, that it can't be changed. And that's where the problem comes in. Anyway, coping mechanisms, right? When it's specifically a problem with how you view yourself, your body, and how much fat you have, typically tends to be food that you turn to cope with that stress. So then that just almost embeds it even more that you're fat and a failure because you once again turn to food, right? Do you see where I'm going with all this shit? That was my biggest problem with relationships. And I would almost keep seeking out the same type of people that were insecure themselves. And every time I would maybe get burned a wee bit by someone who wasn't in a good place themselves, I would internalize that as my problem, always me, always I had to change something about myself. But really, I was almost like seeking that out. And then it was just reinforcing the beliefs I had about myself. So I had to start looking at dating well differently. One of the things Paul had me doing was going on second dates with people I wouldn't have went on second dates with. And even though that might seem as like a pointless venture, and even though those second dates were often so unbelievably shite, it just got me to start opening my eyes a little bit to, right, okay, I just go for people that I think I have a spark with. But realistically, sometimes that spark is just they were maybe a bit hyper obsessed with me from the start due to an insecurity which never ends well. And that when I say obsessed with me, I don't mean in a way that I am fucking class. I mean in a way that I was so insecure, I felt like I needed someone obsessive to make me feel comfortable. You see, it's all quite complicated, you know. Jesus, these ones get quite deep, don't they? They bloody do. Meow. Yeah, that was the thoughts I had that in relationships. I must be perfect in a relationship. And then when I had breakups, it was like, I won't get over this. And they were all opinions as well. When you do, like, if you were to do CBT with a therapist, like, one of the things that comes up is like must, shouldn't, need to, or should sort of statements. So it's like, I need to be perfect. Whereas really it's like, you can't control what the other person is going to be like. So you don't really, and also when you look at it with real logic, is perfectionism doesn't exist. It's the same way with food. People are like, I need to be perfect with food. And it's like, but perfect doesn't exist. So you've already set an expectation that can't be met. And that's where the stress comes, because you're always going to like overeat sometimes. You're always going to pick options that aren't quote unquote the best, but they actually might be the best because it's the best option you could have made at that point. Or you're going out for dinner. Yeah, you're not going to hit 50 grams of protein, 2 veg on your plate, and unprocessed food, are you? But you might have made the best option for you in that particular moment. By the way, you might have had a hard day at work and a little bit of ice cream at the end of the day was fine. You know, you can't look at it through factual lenses. If you're not watching the video podcast, I'm doing a lot of weird visual cues for when I'm speaking. By the way, that's why I'm making weird little voices sometimes as well. But I think, is there anything else that I want to cover on? Oh yes, the main fucking bit, right? This is what the headline. So I was speaking to a client the other day. So very self-sabotaging sort of scenarios. A lot of people have been ill around about this time of year. So clients are maybe only recently started and then have maybe had a week or two where they've been sick. By the way, I had 2 weeks or whatever that cold was going around, and I've never been sick for that long in my life, and it was absolutely horrendous. Whatever that is, nip it in the bud. Never let anyone have it again. Awful gear. 2 weeks, that's Nancy behaviour. That's a nonce that's made that virus. But I've had clients that have had it as well. Who was the nonce we were talking about earlier? Oh, Hitler. Nonce. Definitely a Nazi nonce. And we were talking about her thoughts around, because she was struggling to get back into things, and she was like, I just don't see the point of lifting or whatever. I've not been to the gym in 2 weeks. I'm such a failure. I was doing so well. This always happens to me, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, right, okay, so I was sick as well over the last 2 weeks. And I was trying to do runs and stuff like that. I didn't, as in before I got sick, I was running. I didn't run through the sickness. As I started to feel a wee bit better, I eased myself back in. But I was like, what would, either to me or someone else, your best friend or your husband or whatever, what would be your genuine advice to that person? And they were like, you can't just not be sick. If you went to the gym, you would make it worse. The only way to recover from a sickness is to not really do anything. And the important thing about this, about doing that exercise, it might feel woo-woo, right? But if you look at it, that's your genuine advice for someone that you care about and you love. So if that's your genuine advice for someone you love, then that's your advice for yourself. Why would it be any different? So if that's what you actually think is the best option for someone to, and by the way, that it's not to make them feel better advice, it's your actual advice for someone to get through the other end and to feel better, not just to make them feel better. Like, oh, it's all right to, cheat on your wife. That's fine. That's not genuine advice, is it? You'll tell your wife. Hopefully she breaks up with you for being a fucking bastard. You see, it's genuine advice. So that's what you need to start teaching yourself. One of the best things Paul done with me was, so I done 6 months of therapy, right? And I know I keep bringing it back to like my relationship stuff, or the thoughts I had with that. But this is one of the best things I ever done for myself as a coach was go through that, because it made me understand, right? Oh, okay, right. So the way I think about that, my client thinks about this in the exact same way. It was so eye-opening for me. I was genuinely going for therapy for my own struggles. I didn't make them up. I was like, mate, I'm actually like, this is holding me back massively. I don't think I'll ever have a healthy relationship. I know I've got these thoughts, but I don't know how to fix it. Now I have a rough idea. Again, not easy. I'm not saying it's easy to break fucking multiple decades worth of thought loop patterns, but it can be done. And I was honestly feeling so much better. I'd started to go through like why I'd maybe felt like that. I was understanding myself a lot more, and I felt like a whole load of guilt had released from me because I understood why I'd maybe had all those struggles just from my childhood and stuff. And I stopped beating myself up about things, but I hadn't actually like went out yet and like embodied these things. But one of the last sessions I done, well, the last one before I went back again, he said to me, right, now I want you to argue with yourself, and he was going to play me. So he sat across from me, pretended to be me, and pretty much just embodied the stuff I was saying when we done CBT, pretty much just said the sort of things that I would have probably said before we started therapy. And like one of my biggest things was trust, right? I just didn't trust someone else. I didn't trust that I could be myself and deal with another person's opinions or them being able to like love me. So I basically trust issues, right? And I can't remember what it was he said back to me, but he was like, how can you ever trust someone you've been burned in the past? And then the thing that, because there was a few times during therapy that it was like, whew, like a whole weight had been lifted, and like a good therapist will lead you to those things yourself. It's not like PT should probably come at it like this, and like myself, I should probably aim to do this more, like walk clients to conclusions themselves, right? But I said back to them, but I trust my dad with all my heart to always do whatever he thinks is best for me. Not necessarily always right, but my dad is honestly, even though life's terrible with the anxiety stuff and all that, when I look at my dad's actions, they always line up with what he thought was best for me. Like he's honestly one of the best people in the world. He's a bloody boomer, mate, by his class. And I've not done a wee Aussie in a while. Because if I look back on everything, like every time my mum was just being an absolute nut job and just doing stuff that made zero sense whatsoever, my dad was always like the voice of reason that would just come up. He would just he wouldn't speak to my mum. He'd just be like, nope, not speaking to you, but he would take me away and go and just walk me through stuff. Not like, and he would, at the same time, his ex-wife, who tried to kind of take his son away from him, he never, ever like tried to make me not like my mum. If anything, he'd done the complete opposite, whereas my mum would always be bad-mouthing my dad, always. But my dad would always be like trying to make me still have a good relationship with my mum and make me not hate her, but I did hate her. So when I said to Paul, I trust my dad so I can trust other people, it honestly shifted. Something in me shifted. It was like a fucking chemical change in my brain. And I just went, it was just like a massive epiphany. I was like, oh, I can trust other people. Like, I trust the closest person to me, my dad. And just because I don't trust my mum doesn't mean I can't trust a full gender. I trust my dad. And that honestly changed from then. But I obviously came to all other different sort of conclusions that were all helpful as well. But that one, I was just like, mate, that is blowing my mind. And it's so simple, but so is the fact that you calling yourself bad is a terrible thing. It's very, very simple. But when you have zero self-awareness, which most of us go through a lot of life, some people go through all of life, typically boomers. Sorry for all the boomer. I've really been I was never this anti-boomer an hour ago. But they go through a life with zero self-awareness, really, and then I went through a lot of life with no self-awareness. So this all sounds simple, but until you think about it, you'll never know. You'll never know what you're doing to yourself. So yeah, that was one of the biggest things that he done, and it was just like, so you can think about it as like you can do CBT with a therapist. You can do, if you can't do that, at least you could go, and every time you have like bizarre thought patterns, go and write everything down and go, what's fact or what's opinion, and then also you could argue against yourself, or you could write down the logical conclusion after it. Like, I'm a failure. You could be like, right, you could argue against yourself at all the things you're not failing at. Like maybe you're a good parent, you're a good brother, you're good at your job. Like you're not a failure, and you can argue against yourself. There'll always be things that you can find to back yourself up. And you can also do the advice that you would give someone you love. And it's probably better to do it, obviously do it with a therapist, but even just that sort of thing, actually play out a proper scenario. You can't just think about these things in your head. Like really create a proper scenario. If you're going to do it in your head, really write out a proper scenario or something you've been in or something that's already happened, and then go through it that way. Because if not, then if it doesn't feel real at all, then you're not going to get the benefit from it at all, really. So how do you actually change it? You have to go and do stuff. You can't just outthink these thoughts, and you can do the CBT, etc. But one of the biggest things Paul ingrained into me straight away was, mate, this is gonna be this is gonna be work. So he would give me homework and stuff, and he didn't say anything to me, but I always was like, mate, I don't want to think like this anymore. So I always went and done it. But even in so let's just take some random thoughts that are very common with clients. I can't stick to the gym. I've never been able to stick to the gym, therefore I can't. I say to them, right, see, how long's the most you've ever stuck to? I've only ever went for 2 weeks, and then I won't go again for a month. I'm like, right, so next 6 weeks, I want you to get to the gym 3 times a week. See if you miss one session, just under no circumstances, don't miss the next one. Don't view that as a failure. Don't view that as oh yeah, I can't stick to the gym because I missed one in those 6 weeks. Just don't miss the next one. And do you know what? See, if you were sick after a week, just go again, no matter what. You can still treat that as 6 weeks. You don't need to go, oh, I need to start this from this again. Just go, right, say it was 3 weeks, sick all of the 4th week. Now just go up to the 7th week, and you've done 6 weeks of going to the gym. That's it. Don't need to stick to that, by the way. That's just completely made up, but it just will blow out the idea that you can't stick to the gym, because it's bollocks. It's just an opinion you have yourself, and most things that are holding you back are just opinions you have of yourself that you can change by just doing something. And it doesn't have to be ridiculously hard, because trust me, with those sort of negative thought patterns that are quite hard to break, that in itself is hard enough. But all it's going to be is going to be you having the same thoughts as always, that you can't stick to something. You'll maybe feel a wee bit overwhelmed one day. You'll be like, right, that's it, I can't stick to something. And all you need to do that day is get through the gym doors. You can do the shittest workout of all time. You can do half a workout, but you just need to win 1 or 2 of those battles and get yourself in the right direction. And then you'll start building momentum. The more momentum you have, the longer you do it for, the quieter those thoughts will be. And yeah, I know this is simple, and the context of it is simple. In practice, it's obviously difficult, because that overwhelm can feel like the end of the world, and it can really feel like it is impossible for you to go to the gym. But once you win that battle that battle becomes easier. So just treat it as that. As every time I go on a run now, say if it's 10k, see the first 1k, I want to do it. Even if it's not hard, I'm just no, I will, no chance I can run 10k tonight. And I just go, do you know what? I'm just going to win the mental battle. Obviously, that's I've been learning about myself for years, but since starting running again recently, been learning even more about myself. It's a constant journey. It never really ends. But if most people just avoid the journey, but if you genuinely, if you start going on it, you'll just feel you believe in yourself. Even if you I die on my deathbed living a very average, by social media standards, I don't make a crazy amount of money, but I PT'd all my life. But I just fought like this the full time. I know I'm gonna die a very fulfilled and happy man because I pushed myself to believe in myself. So yeah, like you're gonna have to go. Like another thing you can do, say with food, right? Say if it's like, oh, I must be perfect with food. You go, right, I've got a meal out on Saturday. That's me. I'm going to be going off plan. I would usually self-sabotage myself because what's the point? I've got a meal out on Saturday, right? Go out for that meal. Have whatever you want on the menu. Weigh yourself the next day on Sunday. Your weight might go up, right? When your weight goes up, just keep your food the same as what it was before the Saturday. You don't need to like chop it right down or anything like that. Just say eat it like maintenance. See your weight come back down, and there you go. You've showed yourself that you don't need to be perfect with your diet, and you can come at it with logic that it's actually going out and doing things. You can't just tell yourself things. You have to go out and almost show your head the truth. Show your head the logic, and then your head will understand, and there'll be less turmoil because there'll be less having to debate with yourself about who you are and about your opinions of yourself, because you'll be showing yourself what you're capable of, and it'll be changing your opinions of yourself. That, like, one of the biggest things I've say to clients when they're leaving is like, remember, you are now a person who goes to the gym. That's all it is. It's you don't need me. I've gave you the tools. You've went to the gym the last year. You've maybe missed sessions here or there, but you've went for a full year. You done that, not me. So you're a person that goes to the gym. Remember that. Simple things like that. Right, so you can't, these are all tools, but if you don't use them, fuck all hams. Basically. Absolutely fuck all hams. But anyway, by the way, if there is some availability for coaching, right? I don't actually do this on here ever, really, but if you do want to apply for coaching, this is the stuff I'm big on. I do in person with my online clients as well from this gym in Airdrie, just outside Glasgow. I'm going to start, next one's next week, doing community things with my clients and stuff as well. So just DM me more info on Instagram or something for if you want to know more about coaching. I can talk to you about that. But yeah, I was dreading this episode because I was so tired before I done it, and then I started being a weird little freak. And it was actually turned out pretty well. And I think this might be one that I'll share with clients and future clients, because this is the most important stuff in my opinion. Going to the gym, most important. Second, this stuff, because this is why you can have PTs who can just drag you across the finish line, cut your calories, force you to go to the gym, and you just believe that you needed that person to fucking drive you the full time. And you still have no belief in yourself. You're like, I never done any of that. They done it. I come at it the opposite way. I give you the tools. You go use them. I do in-person sessions with you and all that. But I reinforce the belief in yourself. Not that you need me. Because you don't. You might need me for a certain amount of time. But then you're off. You're away. You're doing it yourself. Right. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. And I'll catch you in the next one.